Good evening, and welcome to Hello, It's Us, Perspectives on Inclusion. This program is dedicated to educating the general public about issues that are important to the disability community. We hope that you'll discover that those issues are important to everyone because people with disabilities are obviously an important fabric of the general community. Hello, It's Us is brought to you through a collaboration between the University of Iowa Center for Disabilities and Development, Uptown Bill's Coffee Shop, and the good people here at Public Access Television. My name is Mike Honig. I work at the University of Iowa Center for Disabilities and Development as a program coordinator, and I serve as a co-host for Hello, It's Us. Keith?
My name is Keith Ruff. I am retired, but I'm still an advocate for disability issues. And now I am published author. So welcome, Johnathan.
Thank you.
Good to have you.
Thank you.
Yes, this is great to have a friend of both of ours and colleague, Johnathan Ice, joining us for a two-part series. This is a bit of a different type of show. Those of you who watch on a regular basis, we oftentimes will bring in an agency or legislators to talk about services and issues that are, and those things will certainly come up today, but we also feel that it's really important for viewers to understand disability in a very positive perspective, and we think Johnathan is just the guy to help all of us think of disability in that light. So I'll reiterate Keith's welcome, Johnathan. Thanks for coming on the show here.
Thank you.
All right.
Johnathan, where are you from?
I was born in Albany, California, but, basically, though I've lived in 11 states, most of the time I spent close to half of my life in Minnesota, and now it's been 18 years in Iowa.
And what about, so, you know, of course we could go on and on about Iowa, Minnesota jokes, but...
Oh yeah, fortunately they've pretty much died out.
They did.
Yeah.
But anything in particular that, just interesting anecdote growing up in Minnesota or North Dakota or anywhere that might be...
Mike knows that I lived in North Dakota as a child also. And so one thing that I do find interesting is the attitudes toward winter in those places versus Iowa. And so the attitude in, especially in Minnesota, is bring it on. The cold keeps the riffraff out. And they play in winter. And that's partly because it's cold enough so the snow remains playable. Sort of like it was here in Iowa this winter.
This year.
At least in January and February. But down here, usually it gets crusted over like it did at the end of February, and then it's miserable and it's just something to fight. So it was sort of interesting when I first came here to Iowa for the Department for the Blind. I was noticing that the people on their travel routes, the people learning how to use the white cane in cane travel, they were doing all their stuff on the skywalks in Des Moines in the middle of the winter. And we got a blizzard there one day.
Yeah.
And I decided, okay, it's my turn to do a travel thing. I'm going to go out in the snow. Because when I was doing my training in Minnesota, they didn't have any pity on us. If it was 10 below, we'd go out and deal with the 10 below. If it was snowing, we'd go out and deal with the snow, because that's part of life.
In Minnesota.
In Minnesota, well, it's anywhere. Weather happens.
That's true.
And so I went out and dealt with the snow, and it became sort of legendary at the Department for the Blind.
Really? Because they just weren't, they were surprised that you know, maybe the teacher didn't want to go out in it either to have to
Might be,
check
who
out.
knows. And then when we had the 23 below or 31 below day in Cedar Rapids this winter, I went out. I had some groceries that had to be gotten and went off to the High View, which is about a mile from where we live, and walked there and walked back.
Wow.
And some people think that was heroic. I thought it was just sort of It's what you do in the winter.
I think I have another adjective for it, but I won't use that one.
Crazy,
A
probably.
little crazy. Oh, but that is interesting because, you know, I have friends in Missouri, and they just think Iowa winters have to be the worst ever. So it's probably, you know, depending on how far south you go.
Yeah.
So,
Like in Georgia, if they get one in the snow, they stop.
I missed that. What was that?
In Georgia,
What about in
if
Georgia?
they get 1 inch of snow, they
Do they get
stop
snow? Well,
altogether.
I've never lived in Georgia, so I can't say that from personal experience, but I know at least in the northern part of the state, they do get snow. In fact, I was visiting my sister who did live in Georgia for a year in the southwestern part of the state, in Maracus, and I was there in December, and we did get a sprinkling of snow one day there. So it does happen, but it's not often.
it's pretty rare.
Yeah, and I was living in New Mexico for 5 years before I came back here, and there we would periodically get snow. We got 8 inches in Albuquerque one day, and in fact, that was a day that the National Federation of the Blind chapter there in Albuquerque had a training session planned. It was going to be at one of the senior centers there, and we had over 100 people signed up for this session. And they came, 8 inches of snow fell, and anywhere in the south, when you get that amount of snow, it's calamitous. Everything closes down. And 30 people showed up for this event, but there was only one senior center staff person who showed up, and to stay open, they had to have 2 staff on hand, so they closed the center, and we had to go home.
Oh, no, all these 30 people came out.
So the
for-
blind folks were the ones who showed up, and the employees didn't.
That is ironic. You know, and this is, for those of you not, well, I guess we should go back. Well, no, we're going to go do this. I believe in following a line of thinking.
Go ahead.
And, you know, since you brought up the whole idea of support groups, you know, that was one of the things that we're scheduled to talk about today. And I think that just goes to show, you had shared with me off air that a similar situation happened in Iowa with you starting a new support group, that the weather was really bad and, you know, you didn't think anybody showed up and like 20 people showed up. And I think that really illustrates, for those that haven't figured out, Johnathan, you know, talking about working with the Department for the Blind and so forth, also is blind, and we'll talk some more about that as we go along. But it illustrates the importance of peer support and getting people with blindness and low vision together, and it obviously is important to them to show up under conditions like that.
Yeah, we had that on the 25th of January, which was the first really bad cold snap that we got during this winter, at least if I'm remembering correctly. And they knew it was going to be a cold one before it was, and everything was being closed down. The schools were being closed down, and programs all over the city were being closed down. I did not want to have to organize this thing again. And also, from that previous experience in Minnesota and North Dakota, I thought, it's only cold weather. No one's going to die from this. And so I decided we're going to go ahead with this. And so we had gotten the publicity out, and we had 20 people show up for this program at the library. The first one the first one who showed up, she showed up about an hour or so before on the paratransit. The first one to actually enter the room was a 97-year-old lady.
Wow.
Who was just bound and determined she was going to be there. And we had everyone from their 30s up to our 97-year-old in the group. Speaking of support groups, I think, and it's very important to have these things for a number of reasons. I think one of the biggest things is you find out you're not alone in this. And for most people who are blind, it's an acquired disability. It comes with age, usually macular degeneration, diabetic retinopathy, glaucoma. Those are the three big culprits. And often, because of the negative attitudes toward blindness in our society, and pretty much all over the world, there is this expectation that they're going to be living the rest of their lives just off in a corner, not being able to do anything. And and if they're off in a corner, you're not going to have contact with other people who are in the same situation. By having a support group, that gives people a chance to meet with other people who are in the same situation, compare notes, learn tips and tricks from other people, and find out that life after blindness does not have to be a hell. It can be a hell, but it can't. With proper attitudes and training and equipment, a person can function very effectively after blindness comes, whether it's adventitious or you're born with it. And so we end up, that's one of the things we try to get across. There are educational things that we can do. We can get people in contact with resources that are available in the community. And then there's just the plain old social part. People develop friendships in these groups that can last their lives. And so when I worked with the Iowa Department for the Blind for 17 and a half years, up until 2013. And I was, most of that time, I was working as a rehabilitation teacher, which was teaching people the skills of blindness, in a 6-county area here in east central Iowa. There were 4 support groups in that area, and each one was very different. It was really quite interesting to see the dynamics of these different groups. And so, but I thought they were all helpful in their communities in their own ways. And when the support group in Cedar Rapids faded away a year or so ago, while I was still in New Mexico, I came back and there was no support group. I thought it was important that we revive one. And so we are in the process of reviving it. We'll have our first regular meeting tomorrow.
Oh.
It's at 1 o'clock at Cottage Grove Place, Sedlacek Hall, and that's 2115 First Avenue Southeast in Cedar Rapids.
Are you going to have a set date each month? Or?
Yeah, it's going to be, at least for right now, it's going to be at Cottage Grove Place. That's going to be our regular venue. And it will be the 4th Thursday, which most of the year will be just fine. That will be a problem in the fall. It will always coincide with Thanksgiving, and it will also come very close to Christmas.
Yes.
And so we'll have to find some way of being able to be functional at that time of the year.
Johnathan,
Yes.
how many people are in the group?
Well, it's hard to know. We had those 20 people who showed up at that meeting. Undoubtedly, there will be some who came there and decided, no, this isn't for me, and they will not come back. I think there were a lot of people who didn't come because of the weather,
Yeah.
who under with better weather conditions may come and visit us. I'm expecting that word of mouth will be positive, and so people will come, they'll find out that this was useful to them, they'll tell their blind friends. And that's the kind of thing, so, I'm expecting it to be the same kind of thing that happened when I was with the Department for the Blind. I was here in east central Iowa for 17 and a half years. I was the face of the Iowa Department for the Blind out in this part of the state. And so if there was any kind of a problem with regard to blindness, and when I use the term blindness, I'm talking about the whole range, from significant loss of vision to total blindness. Whenever someone was affected by blindness, many of them had heard about me, they would come to me. And I'm hoping that that kind of thing will happen with the support group.
Johnathan, you mentioned very early on how you dealt with the weather
How have I
and
dealt with the weather?
and your blindness.
Um, I don't think the weather is much of an effect, at least on me. I mean, I'm just one of these people who's going to go out in any kind of weather.
Okay.
But it can. Now, I have to say that I have some usable vision. And I would be stupid not to use it, at least as long as it's useful to me. I hope that I have the wisdom to pay attention to my cane as I'm walking around. Almost all the time when I'm out in the public, I use a white cane. I have it right here with me.
Yes.
And so it's there as sort of a backup in case my eyes are not giving me accurate information. But as a matter of fact, I do use my eyes to help me get around. And especially since I lost all the hearing in my left ear 6 years ago. And that means that I do not have pinpoint sourcing of sound anymore. It's very hard to tell where sounds are coming from. So that way of orienting myself in space is gone, and probably for the rest of my life. I used to be very good at locating sounds. And so when I got my training, I was a very good cane traveler with the sleep shades or blindfold, or what they're now calling learning shades.
Learning shade.
Yes, I think it's a bit over the top, but I understand the concept.
Yeah.
So anyway, I was doing my training in Minneapolis, and I was walking all over that city with the shades on, and we use those things. People wonder, is that some kind of torture that they're doing to people? Are they preparing them to be expecting them to be totally blind? No, no. The idea of the use of sleep shades was to basically to simulate total blindness, to give you a chance to get good fundamental skills in the skills of blindness, like cane travel, braille, talking computers, cooking, etc. And being able to have confidence that you can do this no matter what the situation. Because so many of us who have partial vision, it's variable in its usefulness. For me, glare is a problem. And so if I have the sun in my eyes, or at night and there's car headlights facing me, I may have a devil of a time being able to see where I'm going. And so with having good cane skills, I don't have to stop. I can just keep on going because I'm using the cane, I know how to use it effectively, and I'm not stopped by that. And so I can't remember what I was trying to get at here.
I think the original question, well, I think you've covered it. Keith, you were asking about the weather and blindness.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if you were going beyond that, or whether you were specific.
Well, I just was going to, besides the weather, how do you deal with your blindness?
Yeah,
every
okay,
day?
yeah, and I was going in that direction, yes.
Okay.
And so when I was getting my training and was using the learning shades while I was doing that, I was dealing with inclement weather was not fun. Actually, I found much worse than snow was 40 degrees and driving rain.
Oh.
Those are my most miserable travel experiences.
Don't worry, I don't like it either.
The rain magnifies the sound and has it bouncing all over the place, and it makes it much harder to locate where the traffic is.
Yes, it does.
But again, that's a fact of life, and we were sent out to deal with it. I learned how to deal with it. Not to like it, but I learned to deal with it.
Yeah. Well, I've heard horror stories of people that would only go out when the sun was shining, for instance, because they could use that as a sort of as a directional guide. And think about, especially if you live somewhere up in the upper Midwest or maybe even New England, we have a lot of days when there's no sun out. So
I lived in Cleveland back when I was a young adult.
Is there ever sun in Cleveland?
The sun occasionally appears there, but I understand it's the third cloudiest city in the country.
Wow.
And they had what was known as the sunless season in the fall.
Ugh.
And there was one year that the first year that I was there, I think it was a month where we never saw the sun. It would tease us. You could see that there was clear sky out over the lake, or clear sky inland, but never overhead.
No thanks.
And so, yeah. And so, yes, it is, you can get a lot of useful information from the sun to keep yourself oriented if you're attentive to that. But I was intent on not being a fair weather traveler.
That's good. Did we'll circle back to this now. And I've known Johnathan for many years, but I don't honestly know the answer to this question. Were you born with a vision loss, or is this something that happened? Is it a progressive condition, or what is the stroke of blindness?
It's been largely stable all my life. I was born with congenital toxoplasmosis, which most people have never heard of if they're not a physician. I understand it's a fairly common disease. It's like a mild case of the flu. Most people have it, or at least many people have it before they get to childbearing age. If it happens to a pregnant woman, it can have significant impacts on the child. I'm actually quite lucky because I only got the loss of vision. It caused scarring on the retina, basically macular degeneration.
Okay.
And, but it can also cause intellectual deficits. It can cause skeletal deformations. I think the closest thing that people have been dealing with recently, there's been all this stuff about Zika virus.
Yep.
I think that the effects are sort of similar to that. But this one is spread through cat feces and uncooked meat, mostly.
Okay.
And so back about 1970, they discovered the link to cats. Cats are one of the major hosts for Toxoplasma gondii, which is the organism that causes the disease. And so that was an article in Newsweek. Mama put out the cat. And it was about this discovery. And so women have been counseled to stay away from cats during their pregnancies since then. Well, I was born in 1950, so that's long before that happened. And so it probably was the uncooked meat rather than cats, because my mother, we're mostly German in background, and I hadn't realized that this is a vestigial German thing, but I've been told that it's not uncommon for German people to have uncooked ground beef. And I remember growing up when Mom was fixing hamburgers or something with ground beef in it, she'd pop a ball of that in her mouth and offer it to us.
Oh my! Wow.
And we liked it.
Ugh.
And yeah, it's disgusting to people who've never had it. But I guess it's the fancy name for steak tartare. But anyway, my guess is that was probably how she got it. And so anyway, and so the thing is that I was born with this, and one of the things about being born with something like this, a child's brain is so plastic and can work out all kinds of things that adults are very challenged to do or just never can succeed at. I had all these broken images that were coming into my brain. When the doctors first took a look into my eyes, this is before I was verbal, so I couldn't say a thing to them about it. They looked into my eyes, saw all that scarring there, said, this kid's only going to have light perception. We were living in California at the time. My parents put us on the waiting list for the California School for the Blind and all that kind of stuff, and they were ready to have a blind child. And but it became clear before long I was seeing some things visually. And somehow I've been able to put those scattered images together into a coherent, full-field image. Now, with macular degeneration, you have blind spots right in the middle of the vision. And that's the center of the retina, the macula. That's where you get all your sharp vision. That's not healthy in my situation. And so, but somehow, again, probably because I was doing this from day one, I learned to look around those blind spots in my vision, just like everyone who has healthy vision has blind spots where the optic nerve goes into the retina. And they learn to look around it. They don't even know it's there unless they are under very controlled circumstances. Sort of that way with my macular degeneration blind spots. I've learned to look around them. I don't even know they are there. And so a full field of vision, but it's not a full acuity. The acuity is awful. And so when I was growing up, we always knew my vision was bad. They tried large print books on me when I was in elementary school, but it didn't really help. As long as I was able to get close enough to the print, I could read regular print. So I have some print here that I have some notes on. Down here where people would normally read it, it's just a bunch of lines.
Yeah.
Get closer and closer and closer. Mike and Keith introduced the show and acknowledge sponsors, etc. And so
There you go.
And so that's about an inch or two off of my eyes, and I'm able to read it. I'm very nearsighted in addition to the macular degeneration. That allows, and in a way, that's my form of magnification. Bring it up close, and it comes into focus. Whereas for a person with normal vision, normally focusing eyes, that would put it out of focus.
Gotcha. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna take another line of conversation, but unfortunately, we're gonna have to do that as a part of next week's show because, believe it or not, we are at time here. So we want to thank you for coming to join us, Johnathan, and we're looking very much forward to next week. We also want to thank our sponsors and most of all of you for watching us either on public access television or on our YouTube channel. So Keith, why don't you bring us home here?
Thank you, Johnathan, for
And thank
coming.
you. Thanks for the opportunity.
And thank you out there. Have a good week.
You too.
Spring is coming. Bye now.